Hey y'all, welcome back to Fearless and Free with Whitney. I know it's been a minute since I've sat down and done a video like this, and just a little transparency. Sometimes it's good to pull away, okay? We talk about the word all the time, and sometimes we just quote the word, but we don't walk the word out. And when it comes to pulling away, even Jesus had to pull away, okay? Because sometimes we just need to get quiet. We need to live a little bit. We need to allow God to deal with ourself before we're constantly trying to pour something out to everybody else. Okay. And I feel like that's where I've been. But while I've been in this season, Ecclesiastes 3 has really been speaking to me differently. And I think sometimes we're so busy trying to get out of a season that we never stop and ask God what He's trying to do in us while we're in it. So that's what I want to talk about today. And the question is, what season are you fighting that God is actually trying to use to grow you? Sometimes we delay our own growth because we're resisting the very season God ordained. All right, and we're going to go right on in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 1. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. Before we even get into everything else, we have to understand this. There is a season and there is a purpose. Okay? I'm going to say that one more time. There is a season and there is a purpose. And that means just because I don't like the season doesn't mean there isn't purpose in it. Just because you don't like the season, it doesn't mean that there isn't purpose in it. Okay. And just because it's uncomfortable, it doesn't mean God isn't working. Sometimes we want the harvest season, but there's also a planting season. We want the building season, but sometimes there's a tearing down season first. And we have to stop measuring God's presence by how comfortable the season feels. I'm gonna say that one more time, y'all, because this is really speaking to me even right now. We have to stop measuring God's presence by how comfortable the season feels. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and go through the rest of Ecclesiastes. Okay. So verses 2 through 8, there's a time for it, a time to be born and a time to die. And this is bigger than physical birth and death. There are things that are going to be born in us, and there are things that have to die in us. Oh man, there are things that are going to be born in us, and there are things that have to die in us. Old mindsets, old habits, old versions of ourselves. Everything isn't supposed to come with you. Okay. There's a time to plant and a time to uproot. And sometimes God has you planting when you don't see anything happening yet. You're praying, you're being obedient, you're doing the work. Keep planting. Okay. Don't stop. But there's also a time when God says this can't stay planted here anymore. Some things have to be uprooted so something healthier can grow. Okay. There's a time to kill and a time to heal. There are things God will allow to come to an end, but there's also a season for healing from what ended. And we can't rush healing because we're uncomfortable with the process. Okay. A time to tear down and a time to build. Sometimes what feels like everything falling apart is actually God exposing what wasn't strong enough to remain. You can't build something new on a foundation that can't sustain it. Come on. Who am I talking to? You can't build something new on a foundation that can't sustain it. And sometimes God has to tear down before he rebuilds. Come on. You've been trying to build on that same old foundation, and God is saying to you right now that that foundation it has to be torn down before he can build, because if you keep trying to build on that same foundation, it won't be able to sustain or hold what it was meant to carry. Okay. So it has that foundation, it has to be torn down so God can rebuild it. A time to weep and a time to laugh. And with this one, y'all, Faith doesn't mean you don't cry. There are seasons where you're going to weep, but don't make a permanent home in a temporary season. There will also be a time when you laugh again, okay? A time to mourn and a time to dance. Give yourself permission to acknowledge what you've lost, but understand that mourning isn't the only season God has for you. There will be joy again, a time to scatter and a time to gather. There are seasons where God separates things, people, relationships, opportunities, even plans. And there are seasons where He brings things together. And we need discernment to know which season we're in, okay? A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. Everything isn't meant to be held on to forever. Sometimes maturity looks like knowing when to embrace something and knowing when it's time to release it. There's a time to search and a time to give up. There's a time to pursue, but there's also wisdom in knowing when something is over. And some of us exhaust ourselves trying to resurrect things God already gave us permission to release. We still trying to hold on to it. Come on. You got to let that thing go, and you know what it is that you need to let go. Okay? A time to keep and a time to throw away. Ask yourself, what am I carrying into this season that belonged to the last one? I'm gonna say that one more time. Ask yourself this. What am I carrying into this season that belonged to the last one? Everything you needed there may not be necessary here. Oh Lord, everything you needed there may not be needed here. Okay. There's a time to tear and a time to mend. And in that, some things break, but broken doesn't automatically mean permanently destroyed. God also gives us seasons of restoration, okay? A time to be silent and a time to speak. And this one is very important. Everything doesn't require your response. Everything doesn't require a response. Sometimes wisdom is speaking up, and sometimes wisdom is knowing when to be quiet. Okay. Ask God which one, this moment requires. Okay. A time to love and a time to hate. And with saying this one, it's not hatred towards people, but there should be things we learn to hate because of what they produce in our lives. Sin, injustice, pride, anything pulling us away from God. Okay. There's a time for war and a time for peace. Every season um isn't a fighting season. Some of us have been fighting so long that we don't know how to recognize when God is giving us permission to rest. And there is a time to fight, but there's also a time for peace. And Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 11 is beautiful in its time. Okay. So in that it says, He hath made everything beautiful in His time. And notice what it says at the end, in His time. That's important. In His time, because we're looking at something in the middle and calling it ugly, broken, delayed, or unsuccessful. But God isn't finished. God isn't finished. Sometimes we're judging the season before God has completed the work. You already, some things might be going on in this season, or whatever season that you may be in right now, and you're already judging the season before God has even done anything or completed the work. We want to see the whole picture, while God is saying, trust me with this part. Okay. So the question I want us to ask, instead of always praying, God, when are you going to get me out of here? What if we started asking God, what are you developing in me while I'm here? What are you teaching me? What needs to grow? What needs to die? What needs to heal? What do I need to release? Because if I leave this season without learning what the season was supposed to teach me, I may find myself repeating the same lesson somewhere else. I had to pause on that one for a minute because it just came back to me that I had to really get to this place where I had to just sit, and that came from pulling away to just be in that place with God, because I found myself, repeating the same lesson somewhere else, same lesson. And I'm just like, God, what are you trying to teach me? What are you doing? What do I need to see? What do I need to learn? What do I need to understand? Because I see that I'm repeating the same lesson. It's just a different time, different season. Okay. Ecclesiastes 3:14. What God does last. I know that whatsoever God doeth, it shall be forever. Okay. And this right here, what God does last. Nothing needs to be added to it. Nothing needs to be taken away from it. And that's why sometimes God takes his time with us. Okay. He's not just concerned about getting us somewhere. Some of us are so um anxious to arrive and get to the destination. And God is not just concerned about getting us somewhere. He's concerned about developing us into somebody who can sustain where he's taking us. What good would it be that you're rushing and you're so anxious to arrive and to get there, and you don't even know what to do? You unprepared. You can't handle it. Okay. So God is concerned about developing us into somebody who can sustain where he's taking us. And when scripture says God does this so that people will fear him, we're not talking about walking around terrified of God. We're talking about reverence. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that you understand that, because recognizing his sovereignty and honoring his wisdom is understanding. God, you see what I don't see. You know what I don't know. So even when I don't understand the season, I can trust the one who does. I can trust you, oh Lord, because you understand, you know, and you truly understand and know what's best for me. Okay. So in that, y'all, wherever you are right now, don't be so quick to despise your season. Don't rush it. Don't compare it. And don't assume God isn't moving because it doesn't look the way you expected it. Ask him, God, what are you developing in me while I'm here? Because there is a time for everything. There is purpose in the season. And when God is finished with what he's doing, you'll understand why this season was necessary. Okay. I pray that this encourage you. I pray that this enlighten you, and I pray that this wakes something up in you and it changes your perspective on how you see things. Okay. And until next time, remember to stay fearless and free.